I was obsessed. For months, Marcus Stone had been my shadow, always one step ahead, mocking every effort to bring him down. He wasn't just any criminal, he was the type who left chaos in his wake. Every failed stakeout, every dead-end lead gnawed at me. I couldn't escape his presence, even in my dreams. The job had always taken a toll on me, but this time, it felt different. It wasn't just the frustration of the chase, it was the gnawing sense that something was wrong at home. My wife, Sarah, had changed in ways I couldn't quite put my finger on. She'd grown jumpy whenever I mentioned Marcus's name or the latest developments in the case. Every time I left for work, she'd linger longer at the door, her hands trembling slightly as she held mine. "Stay safe," she'd whisper, her voice almost too sweet, like honey masking something bitter. Her smile was wide, but her eyes darted away from mine. At first, I chalked it up to nerves. Being married to a cop wasn't easy, especially when I was dealing with someone as dangerous as Marcus. But the unease lingered. Tuesday night, everything came to a head. At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed, jolting me from a restless sleep in my squad car. A lead had come in, a possible sighting of Marcus in a rundown motel on the edge of town. I grabbed my gear, adrenaline pushing past the fatigue, and sped to the location. It was a bust. Just another false lead. Frustration boiled in my chest as I gripped the steering wheel and turned toward home. My head throbbed, and my eyes felt like sandpaper from days of too little sleep. All I wanted was to collapse in my bed and forget the world for a few hours. The house was dark when I arrived, the porch light casting long, eerie shadows. Something felt off. My instincts stirred, a familiar prickle of unease crawling up my spine. I stepped inside, closing the door softly behind me. The air was thick, heavy with a strange stillness. Usually, I'd hear Sarah's faint breathing from the bedroom or the hum of the heater kicking in, but tonight, there was nothing. Just silence. Then I heard it, a faint rustling from upstairs. I froze, every nerve in my body on edge. Slowly, I climbed the stairs, my boots muffled against the carpet. The sound grew clearer with each step, whispers, low and hurried, followed by a muffled laugh. My heart hammered in my chest as I reached the bedroom door. It was ajar, a sliver of light spilling into the dark hallway. I pushed it open. And there they were. The room blurred for a moment, like a camera lens struggling to focus. My mind couldn't process what my eyes were seeing. Marcus Stone, the man I'd been chasing for months, was lying in my bed, tangled in the sheets, his smug grin flashing in the dim light. And beside him was Sarah, her face pale as she clutched the blanket to her chest. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "Daniel." Marcus cut her off with a lazy smirk. "Officer Wright. You're home early." The world tilted. My wife and my target, together, in the most unforgivable way possible. I didn't trust myself to speak. My fists clenched at my sides, but I didn't move. Years of training screamed at me to stay in control, but the betrayal carved through me like a hot knife. "It's not what it looks like." Sarah stammered, clutching the sheets tighter around her, her voice trembling as though sheer panic could erase what I was seeing. "Not what it looks like." My voice was ice, cutting through the thick, suffocating air. "You're in bed with Marcus Stone, Sarah. A criminal I've been hunting for months. Explain that to me." Her wide eyes darted to Marcus, then back to me, her mouth working to form words that weren't there. "I didn't know who he was. I swear. I didn't know." I barked, the betrayal burning hotter with every second. "You're telling me you accidentally ended up in bed with the most wanted man in this city?" "It's not like that," she wailed. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. I didn't think it was possible for my blood to boil more, but then Marcus chuckled. That low, self-satisfied sound was like fuel on an already raging fire. Moment of weakness? Marcus said, leaning back against the headboard as if he were on vacation, not caught in the act. Come on, Sarah. Tell him the truth. Shut up, she snapped, her voice shrill, the mask of innocence cracking. Marcus ignored her. She's been helping me, officer. Didn't she tell you? The room tilted. Helping? My pulse roared in my ears as the word hung in the air. Marcus's grin widened, a predator toying with his prey. Yeah. Where do you think I've been getting all those tips about your raids? Your plans? Your movements? Sarah's head whipped toward him. Marcus, stop. Why, he said, turning his smug grin on her. It's not like you were ever going to keep this a secret forever, babe. Babe. The word hit me like a blow to the chest, but it was nothing compared to the realization that followed. Sarah hadn't just betrayed me as a husband. She'd betrayed me as a cop. You, my voice cracked under the weight of it all. You were giving him information. My information? No. Sarah shrieked. That's not true. He's lying. Oh, come on, Marcus interrupted, laughing again. Don't insult his intelligence, Sarah. The man's a cop, not an idiot. He turned his attention back to me, his tone almost friendly. You should have seen the way she'd text me after you left for work. Always so eager to make sure I was one step ahead. It was adorable, really. I took a step forward, my fists clenched so tightly my nails dug into my palms. Sarah flinched, pulling the sheets tighter, her face pale. Is that true? I demanded, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. Tell me the truth, Sarah. Right now. Tears streamed down her face as she shook her head violently. No. Daniel, I swear, it's not like that. He's twisting things. Twisting things. Marcus laughed again. Tell him about the money, Sarah. Or should I? She froze. What money? My tone was deadly calm now, the kind of calm that came before an explosion. Sarah opened her mouth, but no words came out. Fine, I'll do it, Marcus said, clearly relishing every second of the chaos. She gave me access to your joint account. Transferred a nice chunk of change to me over the past few months. Gotta say, officer, you married a real team player. My vision blurred with red. Sarah, I said, my voice shaking. Is that true? Her lips quivered. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she whispered. I let out a bitter laugh, the sound hollow in my ears. You didn't mean for it to go this far. What, you just tripped and fell into a full-blown partnership with a criminal. Daniel, please, she begged, her voice breaking. I was scared. He threatened me. Threatened you? Marcus scoffed, sitting up now. Sweetheart, don't play the victim. We both know you enjoyed every second of this little arrangement. Shut up, she screamed, tears streaming down her face. You don't know what it's like to live with that kind of fear. Fear? I spat. Sarah, I'm a cop. If he threatened you, you should have come to me. She looked down, her shoulders shaking. I thought I could handle it. I didn't want you to get hurt. Oh, don't make this about him, Marcus drawled, rolling his eyes. You didn't tell him because you knew he'd throw you out on your ass the second he found out. The words stung, not because of how they were said, but because deep down, I knew they were true. Sarah hadn't been trying to protect me. She'd been trying to protect herself. I turned away from the bed, pacing to keep myself from losing it completely. My mind raced, trying to piece together how long this had been going on. How many of my leads had been sabotaged because of her? How many times had Marcus slipped through my fingers because of the woman I trusted most? I stopped, my back to them. How long? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. What? I spun around, my glare cutting through her. How long, Sarah? How long have you been working with him? She hesitated, her eyes flicking to Marcus. Tell him, babe, Marcus said, leaning back with that infuriating grin. He deserves to know. 6 months, she finally said, her voice trembling. It started 6 months ago. 6 months. Half a year of lies. Half a year of betrayal. Half a year of my life, destroyed. I turned to Marcus, my hand instinctively moving to the holster at my side. You think this is funny? His grin faltered slightly, but only slightly. Hey, I didn't force her to do anything, officer. She came to me. That's not true. Sarah cried, but her voice was drowned out by the pounding in my ears. I took a step closer, my hand tightening around the grip of my gun. You've got about 10 seconds to get out of my house before I arrest you. Daniel, no, Sarah started, but I cut her off. 10 seconds. Marcus's grin finally disappeared. He slid out of bed, pulling on his pants with infuriating slowness. Relax, officer. I'm going. No need to get trigger-happy. He sauntered past me, pausing just long enough to whisper, good luck with her. You're gonna need it. And then he was gone. I turned back to Sarah, who was sobbing into her hands. The room felt suffocating, the weight of her betrayal pressing down on me like a vice. You didn't just betray me, Sarah, I said, my voice cold and hollow. You betrayed everything I stand for. She looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen. Daniel, please. I love you. I made a mistake. I held up a hand to silence her. Save it. And then I walked out, slamming the door behind me. I left the house without another word, the cold night air hitting me like a slap. My mind raced, a storm of emotions I couldn't contain, anger, betrayal, heartbreak. My fists clenched so tightly that my nails bit into my palms, drawing blood. I didn't care. By morning, I had pieced together the depth of Sarah's betrayal. It wasn't just an affair, it was a complete betrayal of trust. She had been feeding Marcus Stone, of all people, information about my investigations. Every dead-end lead, every raid gone wrong, now made sense. She hadn't just cheated on me as a husband, she had betrayed me as a cop. The rage simmered beneath the surface as I sat in my car, staring at the sunrise through the windshield. I wasn't the kind of man to act out of pure emotion. No, I needed a plan. Something precise. Something devastating. By midday, I had all the evidence I needed. Copies of bank transfers from our joint account to Marcus. Screenshots of their text messages, detailing my work schedule and operations. I even pulled footage from a security camera at one of our failed raids, a figure in a hoodie suspiciously similar to Marcus slipping away just minutes before we arrived. Sarah hadn't just betrayed me. She'd helped a criminal escape justice. And now, it was time to confront her. I returned home later that evening, my steps slow and deliberate. The anger that had consumed me earlier was now a cold, calculating force. Sarah was in the kitchen, her back to me as she stirred a pot on the stove. Smells good, I said, my voice calm. She turned, startled by the sound of my voice. Oh, you're home early, she said, her voice too casual. I set my keys on the counter, watching her closely. She looked the same as she always had, her hair tied back, wearing the same old sweatshirt she loved. But now, everything about her felt like a lie. We need to talk, I said, stepping closer. Her face fell, her hands fumbling with the spoon. Daniel, Save it. My voice was sharper than I intended, and she froze. I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick folder, sliding it across the counter toward her. What's this? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Take a look, I said, my tone devoid of emotion. She hesitated, her hands trembling as she opened the folder. Her eyes scanned the pages, bank statements, text messages, photos. Her face paled with each new piece of evidence. "Daniel, I can explain." "Explain." I cut her off, stepping closer. "Explain how you've been funneling money to a criminal. How you've been giving him information about my investigations. How you've been lying to me for months." Her eyes filled with tears as she clutched the folder to her chest. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was scared." "Scared?" My voice rose, the anger breaking through my calm facade. "Sarah, I'm your husband. If you were scared, you should have come to me. But no, you went to him. You helped him. Do you have any idea what that's done to me? To my career?" "I didn't have a choice," she cried, the tears streaming down her face now. "He said he'd hurt me if I didn't help him." "Don't lie to me," I snapped. "You didn't just help him, you were with him. Don't pretend this was all about fear." She broke down then, sobbing into her hands. "I was stupid. I didn't know how to stop. I thought I could fix it, but it just kept getting worse." I leaned against the counter, trying to rein in the fury that threatened to consume me. "You think this is something you can just fix?" I asked, my voice low. "You've destroyed everything, Sarah. Everything." She looked up at me, her face streaked with tears. "Please, Daniel. I love you. I'll do anything to make this right." I stared at her, searching for some trace of the woman I thought I knew. But all I saw was a stranger. "You'll do anything?" I asked, my voice cold. "Fine. Explain it to the judge." Her eyes widened. "What?" "I've already reported everything," I said, my words deliberate and cutting. "The bank transfers. The texts. The footage. It's all with internal affairs now. You're not just my wife, Sarah. You're a criminal. And you're going to pay for what you've done." She stumbled back, her face a mask of shock and betrayal. You can't do this. I'm your wife." "Not anymore," I said, grabbing my keys. "I'll be staying somewhere else tonight. By tomorrow, you'll be hearing from my lawyer." I turned to leave, her sobs echoing behind me. But I didn't look back. I couldn't. The Sarah I loved was gone, and the woman left in her place wasn't worth saving. Once I turned Sarah over to internal affairs, things moved quickly. Her phone was tapped, her movements monitored. I had the full weight of my department behind me, though they didn't know just how personal this had become. Sarah was under strict orders not to tip Marcus off, and surprisingly, she complied. Maybe it was guilt, or maybe it was fear of what Marcus would do if he suspected she was working against him. Either way, she played her part well. Marcus was careful, too careful for his own good. His arrogance made him think he was untouchable, but everyone slips eventually. And I was going to be there when he did. The week passed slowly, the surveillance yielding frustratingly little. Marcus was laying low, and Sarah's attempts to reach him were met with vague responses. But on Thursday morning, her phone buzzed with a message that made my pulse quicken. "Marcus, what's going on? You've been quiet." Sarah, following the script we had given her, replied immediately. "Sarah, we need to talk. It's urgent." The bait was set. After a few tense minutes, Marcus replied. "Marcus, fine. Usual place. Midnight." The usual place turned out to be an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. It was the kind of place where no one asked questions, a haven for people like Marcus. But this time, it wouldn't be his sanctuary. At 11:30 p.m., the SWAT team and I gathered in a darkened van parked a block away. The warehouse loomed in the distance, its broken windows and rusted exterior bathed in the dim glow of a streetlight. "Positions," I said into my radio, my voice calm despite the adrenaline coursing through me. The team moved with practiced precision, spreading out to cover every exit. I stayed in the van, watching the live feed from the body cams. Sarah had already been escorted to a safe location, her part in the operation complete. At 11:57, a sleek black car pulled up to the warehouse. Marcus stepped out, his swagger unmistakable even in the grainy night vision feed. He was dressed casually, but the bulge under his jacket suggested he was armed. "Suspect on site," one of the team members whispered over the radio. I gripped the edge of the monitor, my jaw tight. Marcus entered the warehouse, his footsteps echoing in the vast, empty space. "Sarah," he called, his voice low but steady. "You here?" He moved further inside, scanning the shadows. His cocky grin faltered slightly when no one answered. "Don't play games with me," he said, louder now. "You said it was urgent." "Funny," I said, stepping out from behind a stack of crates. "I don't remember you being so eager to meet when I was chasing you all over the city." Marcus froze, his hand twitching toward his jacket. But before he could draw, the warehouse flooded with light, the blinding beams of flashlights cutting through the darkness. "Hands where I can see them," one of the SWAT members barked. Marcus slowly raised his hands, his face a mix of anger and disbelief. Well, he said, his grin returning. "Officer Wright. I should have known you'd pull something like this." "Disappointed to see me instead of Sarah?" I asked, stepping closer. "Can't say I'm surprised," he said, his tone dripping with mockery. "She's not exactly the loyal type, is she?" His words stung, but I didn't let it show. "She's loyal enough to bring you here," I said. "And that's all I needed." Marcus chuckled, shaking his head. "You think you've won? You don't have anything on me." "Oh, I've got plenty," I said, motioning to the officers moving in to cuff him. "Bank records, surveillance footage, text messages, you've been sloppy, Marcus. And now, you're done." As the officers restrained him, Marcus turned his smirk on me. "You think you're the hero here, right? You're not. You're just a guy who lost everything trying to catch me. How's that feel?" For a moment, his words hit their mark. He was right, I had lost everything. My marriage, my trust in Sarah, the life I thought I had. But as I looked at him, bound and defeated, I realized something. "I feel fine," I said, stepping back as they led him away. "Because now, you've lost everything, too." The warehouse was quiet again, the echoes of the takedown fading into the night. I stood alone for a moment, taking it all in. Marcus was finally in custody. Sarah's betrayal was exposed. It wasn't a clean victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. Sarah's betrayal had cut deeper than I thought possible. Even after Marcus Stone was led away in cuffs, his cocky smirk gone and his hands shackled, I couldn't shake the bitterness that lingered. Watching him face justice brought a grim satisfaction, but it wasn't enough. Sarah's actions had left a scar that no courtroom victory could heal. I spent the days after Marcus's arrest in a fog of disbelief and anger. The house felt foreign, its walls tainted by her lies. Everywhere I looked, there was a reminder of the life we'd built, and the destruction she had brought to it. But I wasn't about to let her walk away unscathed. I took the evidence I'd collected, bank transfers, texts, even a recording of her confession, and met with a divorce attorney. I wanted to ensure Sarah didn't see a dime of my pension, my savings, or my future. She had forfeited her right to my loyalty the moment she aligned herself with Marcus Stone. The lawyer, a sharp woman named Diane, reviewed everything with a critical eye. "This is solid," she said, flipping through the pages. "With this much evidence, she doesn't have a leg to stand on. We'll file immediately." I nodded, the weight of the decision settling on my shoulders. "Do it," I said. The papers were served 2 days later. Sarah called me immediately, her voice frantic. "Daniel, what is this?" she asked, as if the sight of divorce papers had come out of nowhere. "It's exactly what it looks like," I said coldly. "You made your choice, Sarah. Now I'm making mine." She cried, begged, pleaded for me to reconsider. "I made a mistake, Daniel. Please, don't throw everything away over this." I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. "You didn't just make a mistake, Sarah. You made a choice. A deliberate, calculated choice to betray me, to betray us. You don't get to play the victim now." Her sobs filled the silence, but I didn't let them sway me. "I'm done," I said finally. "Sign the papers." The meeting to finalize the divorce was a quiet, somber affair. We sat across from each other in the lawyer's office, the tension thick enough to choke on. Sarah's hands trembled as she held the pen, her tears falling onto the crisp white pages of the agreement. "I never meant to hurt you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I stared at her, my expression unreadable. "You didn't just hurt me, Sarah. You destroyed everything we built." She looked down, defeated, her tears soaking into the paper as she signed her name. With the divorce finalized, I turned my attention to rebuilding what was left of my life. I sold the house, it held too many memories of what once was, and moved into a small apartment closer to work. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I also filed an official complaint with Internal Affairs to ensure Sarah's actions didn't go unnoticed. The department launched an investigation, and it didn't take long for her to be stripped of any access to law enforcement resources. She was a liability, and the force had no room for her. Word spread quickly. The colleagues who had once respected her now avoided her like a plague. Friends stopped calling, unsure of what to say. She was left isolated, her perfect life crumbling around her. And Marcus? He wouldn't be smirking for much longer. With the evidence against him, he faced decades in prison. He might have been slick enough to elude capture for a while, but even he couldn't escape the weight of justice forever. Months later, I ran into Sarah at the grocery store. She looked smaller somehow, her once vibrant presence dulled by the weight of everything she'd lost. "Daniel," she said, her voice tentative. I gave her a curt nod, not stopping as I pushed my cart past her. "Wait," she said, reaching for my arm. I turned, my expression hard. "What do you want, Sarah?" Her eyes filled with tears. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything." I stared at her, my heart a mix of anger and pity. "Sorry doesn't fix what you did. It doesn't erase the lies, or the betrayal, or the lives you endangered." She nodded, her shoulders sagging under the weight of my words. "I know. I miss you." I shook my head, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. "You don't miss me, Sarah. You miss the life we had. But you're the one who destroyed it." I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there in the aisle, clutching a box of cereal like it was the only thing holding her upright. In the end, the revenge wasn't about watching her suffer, it was about taking back control of my life. Sarah had made her choices, and I had made mine. Some might say I was too harsh, that I should have forgiven her and tried to move forward. But after everything she'd done, I knew one thing for certain, I deserved better. And now, I had the chance to find it. Do you think justice was served? Or would you have handled things differently?